Brandy gets way less credit for helping set the stage for 90s teen pop than she deserves. While there's no denying the impact of acts like Britney and Christina, Brandy often gets regulated to being exclusively an R&B act. Yet other stars coming up in the era admittedly studied and took cues from her, yet it often gets overlooked. Brandy was one of the first teen stars to emerge in music in the 90s. Her hit TV show Moesha helped establish her as an all-around entertainer and household name early on. Brandy was a part of an unspoken trio that blazed the R&B music world in the 90s. Brandy, Monica, and Aaliyah were the three young black girls that helped push forward the establishment of young black teenage acts during that time period. Make no mistake though, they all had very different approaches and offerings with their music and personas. They aren't as necessarily easily groupable like a lot of 90s teen acts whose sound and image were a near monolith. However, they weren't devoid of any similarities, but overall, they aren't that similar. Aaliyah was marketed as the more elusive and mysterious one. She had an ice-cold cool which still to this day is being emulated. Monica was marketed to be the little girl with the big voice. She was a little rough around the edges and sassy, often nicknamed Miss Thang. Brandy, on the other hand, was marketed to be the sweet girl next door, and that in many ways would hinder her later on, but at the time being it helped propel her to further success. Monica and Aaliyah were not without their pop hits and crossovers, but more than anything, their image and music stayed faithful to R&B. Brandy's self-titled debut album released in 1994 was an unabashed embrace of hip-hop soul. The album's production is just as ruggedly soft as an early Mary J. Blige album, but its subject matter is candy-coated and relatable and frothy teen-centric lyrics and melodies. Although there are glimmers of what Brandy would take on in the future on this record, it wasn't until her 1998 album, Never Say Never, that her choruses got bigger and production became as equally slick as her branding, something that fairly represented her image of being the girl next door. 1995's Sitting Up in My Room, taken from the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack, set the stage for Brandy's foray into an even more glossy sound. It's simple enough, but effective, and it became her best charting song at that point in time, reaching the peak of number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. The torch was officially lit once Brandy and Monica unleashed their combative classic collaboration titled The Boy Is Mine. Inspired by Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney's The Girl Is Mine, it was a play on a very real feud and tension that Brandy and Monica had behind the scenes, with the inclusion of how they were pitted against each other in the media. Regardless, it made for great art, and their sassiness and genuine disdain for each other can be felt in the song. Despite their tension, it was a unifying moment for both. Produced by heavy hitters such as Darkchild, Dallas Austin, and Brandy herself, it has a pulsating beat backed by the sound of strings and a harp. Brandy and Monica were really the only duo from that time period that were smart enough to exploit the assumption that they had beef, and even though it would prove to be true, it's still such a glorious moment in popular culture. It remains both of their most successful songs to date, topping the Billboard Hot 100 for 13 weeks, topping the pop charts for multiple weeks, winning a Grammy, and effectively becoming one of the most recognizable collaborations of all time. It is arguably the best female-led collaboration of all time. The Boy Is Mine pushed Brandy into becoming a burgeoning pop princess. She had the appeal and format that a lot of Disney and Nickelodeon stars would later have, a successful TV show and music career. She honestly foreshadowed what was to come. Once Never Say Never was finally released, it blazed the charts in true teen pop fashion. The sonics of the album were largely handled by Rodney Jerkins, also known as Darkchild. The album would largely consist of digitized and jittery pop and R&B, a sound that would later be picked up by acts like Destiny's Child. The album pumped out several singles. The saved Diane Warren penned Have You Ever became Brandy's second #1 hit. However, Almost Doesn't Count serves as the much stronger ballad offering, lacing Latin influences with an earnest message of a lover that never was. The album in itself is easy listening and very 90s. It's not without its faults, being that it is such a teen-centric album. However, it shows a level of cohesion, integrity, and genuine intent to make a worthy album, unlike a lot of teen stars from that era. As far as 90s teen pop goes, Never Say Never is as good as it gets, and has aged much better than a lot of material from that time period. And it led Brandy to being a true young multimedia personality, with a TV show, various endorsement deals, and even Barbie dolls. At its core, stylistically, thematically, and commercially, It's not all that different from what acts like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera would later do, although Brandy's work did have more focus and a distinctive sound. They both admittedly studied Brandy before the release of their debut albums.
Probably Whitney Houston, of course, and Brandy's album is like incredible. I love her.
That situation happened when Ron told me, he says, hey man, listen, I got this girl, I want you to produce her. While I was comping the vocal, and before she had to go do ad-libs, she was only listening to Mariah Carey and Brandy. She would put her Walkman on, and she would just be sitting, working on her riffs. That's all she would do.
Brandy infiltrated both the pop and R&B charts with Never Say Never, and helped set a precedent for the acts who would reign just as the new millennium approached.